Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome back once again to Fat Cat Collections. Today, guys, I want to do another discussion video, and this is kind of on a topic that I did, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, and this is about low-profile tires and wheels for your car. Now, I know a lot of times when I start these videos, I always give you guys kind of like my intro, letting you guys know that, I review a lot of different products on the channel, and, I'm into all different kinds of things. This channel, again, that's why it's called Fat Cat Collections. It's a collection of things that I'm into and information that I want to share. So, if you guys do come here for a specific reason or product, just know you're going to find all kinds of different videos like this. And so, this one here, again, is about low-profile wheels and tires. So I see a lot of misinformation out there, like anything else. And again, if I do say something that I'm incorrect on, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes like everybody else, and I don't ever want to come across it that I know everything, because I don't. But I have put a lot of wheels and tires on cars. I do have a lot of experience with fitting things on cars that normally you don't see a lot of people, do. Now, again, when we look at things like SEMA Show, that's a different level. I'm just stating stuff from the average guy. I'm not a professional car customizer. I don't own a shop or anything like that. And, and my skill set is limited. But these are some just basic kind of things just to know, good to know stuff if you are going to look for putting wheels in your car. Now, you always are going to deal with tire shops. Now, let's face it, nowadays, when we look at like a lot of the bigger shops, we have Les Schwab, we have Discount Tire and Big O Tire, stuff like that. There's a lot of these big box stores. Remember, a lot of these places aren't going to want to put wheels and tires on cars that you might want. They're going to tell you information on what they're going to deem or determine fits, right? So I've heard all over the years many times, you can't put 20s on this. 20s don't fit. You see a lot of videos where guys they said 22s wouldn't fit. They say it wasn't possible. And you can put any wheel and tire on a car as long as you have the clearance. And I know that seems really kind of basic and very, simple, but that's really the truth. A lot of times, depending on the ride height of the car, you're going to get a different look. So for instance, when I put wheels and tires on a car, I'm always trying to get the smallest tire that I can get on that wheel, within reason, and we'll touch on that. But not necessarily the reason just because you want the same OD. The same OD as your factory stock height. I know that that's what they come off the factory with, but remember, a lot of times cars from the factory might turn around and put a much larger OD tire. And when I say OD, it's overall diameter, it's wheel and tire combination. They might put a much larger one on there than they really need. A lot of times, when it comes to regulations with, mileage and emissions and stuff like that, there was kind of I've noticed at one point back, like in the early, 2000s, late 90s, they were putting larger wheels and tire combinations on cars because they wanted to get more gas mileage out of the car. So remember, one rotation gets further mileage. That's how that works. So naturally, if you have a smaller setup, it's spinning faster, you get less distance, less mileage. So that was something that they were doing. So a lot of times when you go to like these brick and mortar stores, these big box stores, when they say, oh, what's the car come with? They're going to look at the overall tire size of the car, and they're not going to deviate very much from that. Load rating is another issue. A lot of these places will only put a load rated tire on the car that came from the factory. And again, that's nonsense because when you look at the load rating of tires, basically each tire has a load rating. You basically just take that number or that rating times 4. That gets your total weight requirement or load carrying capacity, and you just look at what the actual car weighs. With the full tank of gas, with people in it, depending on your situation or who you carry with you. For me, I very rarely have more than me in the car. So every now and then I'll have a guest, but that's about it. So I can get away with more with my particular cars. Again, these tire ratings usually are pretty hard to go past, right? But if a manufacturer decided, hey, we're going to put, load index 97s on a car, and you want to go get some, 20-inch wheels in your car, a lot of these brick and mortar stores are going to tell you, oh, no, that's not load rated, we can't do that. Now, that may not be a problem for you, but it depends on the look you're going for. For instance, if we look at like my Solara, my Toyota Solara, I have 20s on that car, and I have a 235/30 Series 20. Now, that's not very forgiving. And keep in mind, a lot of guys will say, "Oh, well, the ride quality. You don't go 20s, only go 19." The ride quality has nothing to do with the size of the wheel. The ride quality has to do with the tires you choose, the car, the age of the struts, and of course, most importantly, the sidewall height, right? So if you go with a tire that's a lot thicker, you're going to have more rubber and there's more flexibility. I call them bubble tires, you know. There's a little bit element of cushion there that you don't get out of a low profile tire due to that really stiff sidewall, right? So again, I've had cars that will basically ride like stock on low profile tires with brand new struts. As the cars age, you know, I just recently replaced all my struts on my Honda with coilovers. And it's a night and day difference. One of my stock struts, it was on there for about 100,000 miles, was completely frozen. We wouldn't move at all. So again, no tire in the world would have made that car ride good. Most of the time when a car rides bad, it's not your tires and wheels, it's your struts. That's, you know, the number one reason. Now, when you go lowering a car, you're changing the geometry of the strut. When you go putting on low profile tires, you're making that strut work harder because it is a rougher ride. So all these things kind of weigh into how your car is going to ride. But if we take a brand new car or a brand new struts on a vehicle, let's just say a brand new car to make it easy. If you take a car right off the factory, go putting low profile tires on it with a big ass wheel, you're not going to notice much of a ride difference. You'll notice a little bit, but not much. When I first got my Honda, the ride quality between 225 35 18s and my bubble tires from the factory, very similar. If anything, you couldn't really tell the difference on regular roads. It was only when you hit a bump or hit something a little rougher, you notice a little bit rougher ride. But once I change up those struts, there's really no difference. Now, that's going with a low profile tire. So low profile tire, I'm not sure exactly where they consider a low profile tire, like what the actual size would be. But you know, let's just say you're going to get something with, like, I would say maybe a 40 series, even a 50 series, I think would be considered low profile. But remember, the sidewall height is determined on the width of the tire. So if you have a 225 30 series and you compare that to a 225 35 series, the 35 series versus the 30 series with the same 225, that same width, those tires are exactly the same width, but when we change the series, we're decreasing from a 35 to a 30, we're decreasing the OD, the overall diameter of the setup, 1 inch. So if you have, let's just say, to make the numbers easy, I'm not going to do it in millimeters, if you have a sidewall height of, you know, let's say you have your wheel sidewall height of 1 inch with a tire that's a 235. If you drop down to a 230, you will decrease that 1 inch overall, okay? And that's generally the rule of thumb. So let's just say when you go, with a tire, like an 18-inch tire, 235 35. If you want the same OD, you will go with a 235 30 18. Okay, I believe it's called plus sizing. Don't quote me on it, but that's how it works. So again, when you go looking at the difference in ride quality between a 225 30, 35 40, they're all very, very similar. What really plays into an account here, and what's a real factor, is that they're not very forgiving. So what you might get away with hitting a pothole with a 35 series, or let's say a 40 series, with a 225 30, you're not going to get away with it. Now, a 255 30 is a much larger sidewall height, because remember, the width of the tire directly relates to the sidewall height. So the sidewall is a percentage of your width. So if you have a 225 35, the sidewall height is 35% of the 225. If you have a 255, that sidewall height becomes larger, and so on, okay? So remember, just making the statement, and I see a lot of guys do it, don't go with 35 series, don't go with 30 series. It has nothing to do with that, because really, if you look at a tire that's, let's say, a 335 30 compared to like a 225 40, I don't know, I'd have to do the math, but they're not very different, you know what I mean? And if anything, probably the 40 series is going to be smaller than that 335 with a 30. Again, I'm just don't do the math and be like, you're wrong, Fat Cat. I'm just stating that it's all relative to the width of the tire. Now, again, getting back to ride quality and what's going to fit on your car. Again, ride quality isn't going to change very much as long as your struts are in good working condition and they still have life in them. I think a good rule of thumb, in my opinion, is 30,000 miles out of a set of struts with a low profile lowered car. But again, you can stretch it. It just depends on how sensitive you are to the car riding a little different. And again, where you live, the roads. Where I live, the roads are fantastic. Other areas have really bad roads. So all that's got, you know, kind of weigh into what you decide to go with. For instance, on my Honda, I had 18s. I had a 225 35. Then I went to a 225 a 215, 35, 18. And because wheels are becoming so difficult to find for a 4-lug, I actually picked up a set of 17s, you know, and I put a 17 on it with a 215, 35. Now again, you know, when you change that, the car ride heights change. I do have coilovers so I can adjust them, but that car is my kind of my winter car. So I like the fact that I was able to, even though I'm losing that cool look of the larger wheel, it's still a 17. And honestly, you know, it's not really not proportional anymore because the car came with like 15. So again, it's all beauties in the eye of the beholder. I would much rather an 18. I think that was the perfect size. Again, I've had the 20s. And remember that if you have the adjustable ride height, you can lower the car on top of those tires. So going with a much smaller tire is like, if you're going to go, if you're, I know I'm saying a lot here, but if you're going to go say, I want to get wheels on my car, and you're not going to lower it, I would honestly go with the manufacturer's recommendation on OD. If you're going to lower the car, you might consider dropping the series down, dropping the OD of the tire and wheel combination down, because you're lowering the car to close up that gap. Nothing looks sillier, I shouldn't say silly, but nothing, in my opinion, looks worse. I don't want to say that. I want, because somebody might like that. In my opinion, for what the look that I want, I prefer to have that fender right on top of the tire. German cars generally come from the factory with less fender gap. When you start looking at like Toyotas and Hondas, stuff like that, there's a huge fender gap, and a lot of cars are like that. So you have to bring the car down quite a bit. Sometimes, depending on your situation, it might be in your best interest to stick with the OD tire and determine, you know, if I need a 2-inch drop, that's going to get that fender down where you have less gap. Because when you lower a car, you want to get rid of that fender gap, and getting rid of the fender gap gives you that look that if you like lowered cars, that's the look you like. And again, everybody has a different idea. Some people like the tuck. For me, I prefer the tuck look, but with my vehicles, you know, it's extremely difficult to get that. Like a Jaguar, the only way to get a tuck look is by going with an airbag suspension or coilovers, and it's not cheap. Yeah, I'll get it eventually, but it's not cheap. I went with H&Rs in that car. I know we're kind of getting into suspension here, but you know, it's worth mentioning if you're watching this video. It's something you might, if you're looking to get low-profile tires and wheels in your car, you're probably going to lower it too. But again, maybe not. Just depends on the vehicle you have, of course. When it comes to my Solar, same thing. Those cars, Jaguars and Solars, there's not a lot of parts out there for them. You know, there's limited options as far as drops and that kind of stuff. And of course, anytime you have something more limited, for instance, you get some eBay coilovers to the Honda for $250 for the set. You want to get them for the Solar, $500. You want to get them for the Jag, about $1,500. So again, it just depends. And I know there's quality differences here and there, but let's pretend that doesn't exist. That's the difference in price because of those cars are just they're more unique. There's not a lot of parts, not a lot of people making the parts. So again, remember, if you are going to get low profile tires, you are looking into getting something like that, it's just making the statement, having somebody tell you, oh, those are going to ride harder, isn't necessarily true. I personally have found, again, that getting low profile tires, I don't really notice any ride difference between my 17s with the 35 to 215, I think 35s now on 17s, compared to when I had the 225 30 20s. And the difference is not forgiving. Those tires, if you hit anything, there's no rubber for you to really absorb that impact. You're probably going to damage the wheel. In my case, you know, small, like 35, 40 mile an hour driving, potholes, probably get away with it, right? And again, I'm not, don't say guaranteed, but you're probably going to be okay. The thing about when you're driving a car with tires like that and lowered, and you just drive differently. You learn to be a very, not aggressive driver, you be a very defensive driver. You're always looking at the road for imperfections. Whereas most people just are looking forward, daydreaming, or just looking forward. You know, I kind of compare, I've never been a motocross rider, but if you have been a motocross rider, you're always looking, or a trail rider, you're looking for things directly in front of you for you to react. You're not really looking out to the distance, although you're peeking up, of course, I get that, but you're really looking for those quick decisions, those quick obstacles you have to make a quick decision on, right? And so I kind of drive like that because I've been driving on lowered vehicles since I was about 18 years old, and I've always had low profile tires. So the thing is that you don't want to make a mistake, and I've never, knock on wood, made a mistake when it comes to curbing a wheel, because, you know, at some point wheels become discontinued. And if you spend a lot of money on a set, you take care of your wheels, you take care of your car, if you have an issue come up, you're not going to have to replace one, you have to replace all four because they're probably not going to be made at a certain point. that's where I'm at with my wheels, except for the Lexanis and the brand new ones I just got. So, you know, and the problem is when you have one wheel, I've had a set of 18s on my car, chrome started flaking from the inside of the bead. Granted, they lasted about 15 years. That means, you know, 3 of them are fine, they'll work, but one doesn't hold air, you can't get a replacement. Same thing with my 20s, beautiful 3-star, tri-star 20s, bent one, cracked another. Had it welded a few times, but you know, they're just not very forgiving. In my case, I was going down the freeway, about 70 miles an hour, just didn't see the potholes in traffic, and bam, that was it. Bent one wheel, cracked another. If those were on maybe a 225/45 series, probably wouldn't happen. There's just no rubber for it to be forgiving. So just kind of keep that in mind. It is something to think about. For my winter car, when I was talking about the 17s and a slightly larger tire, it gives me a little more room because that car is going to be driven during the crummy weather. And so if I do have to take it somewhere, going a distance further, I'm not going to be too worried about it. I know that those tires can probably withstand, you know, some potholes, you know. So just kind of think about those things when you're making a decision to put wheels on your car. That's why you see a lot of people who are going to, and a lot of the big brick and mortar stores, who are going to say, yeah, we want to keep the same OD. We recommend getting a maybe plus sizing for maybe your car came with nowadays like 20s really, maybe do a 22. Really, a lot of cars, to put a 22-inch wheel on, if you're looking at cars that are under, I don't want to use price point, but generally you're less expensive, you're more affordable. That cars are so expensive nowadays. If you're looking at cars like your Hondas, your Hyundais, your Toyotas, your mid-size cars like that, and without getting into like your larger BMWs and your Mercedes, your Chryslers, cars like that generally, really the perfect size for them is a 20. That's why a lot of times you'll see 19s and 20s from the factory nowadays. You can put 22s on them. If I had a newer car like that, I would definitely put 22s because your fender's a lot larger. They've increased the size of the fender to put a larger OD tire in the car for better gas mileage. But it does allow you to put a much bigger wheel. It gives you that look, right? If you, I love that look. I would love to have 22s, but my cars, you know, I stuffed the 20s on the Honda, and you know, because the car was so aggressively lowered, I was tucking almost the wheel. It looked pretty cool, but what I gave up was ride height. So the car sat a little higher. Less gap, looked lower. Car overall, when you look at the ride height, was probably stock height after being lowered 2.5 inches. It brought it up that much. And again, something else to think about if you're, you know, depending on your suspension geometry and how that is set up, you may not have the height from the top of your strut or your suspension components to clear a 22 or a 20. 20 you're probably okay with. I think that really realistically a 20 can go on most cars nowadays. When you start looking at cars like 2000 Honda, those 2000s, 2005s, 20s become harder to put the wheel on. Now again, without having to go with a super skinny tire. My Solara, you could have went with a bigger tire, but that would have changed the look of the wheel. I have 235 30s on 20s. Car's lowered about 2.3 inches. If you go putting a bigger tire on it, yep, you're going to decrease that fender gap, but the car is a very high sitting car anyway, and I mean, those things look like they're lifted coming from the factory. You're going to decrease the way the car looks. And again, remember, every car is different. If you can manage to get a bigger tire on there, like my Jaguar, I have a 245 30 on a 20. Definitely gives you the look. You know, it does. You don't really notice that it's a bigger tire. I think 245 30 is the biggest tire I would actually want to put on a 20, just for that the look. Once you get a bigger tire, I just personally don't like the way the bigger tires look. You start to make the wheel look smaller, and to really make your wheels look bigger, go with the smaller tires. So you know, if you go taking a 17 with a 40 series, to me it doesn't even look like you have wheels anymore. It changes the look that much. That is my opinion, but that's how I've always done cars. Smallest tire I can get on. I'm a careful driver. I'm willing to take the risk. The ride does not bother me, those little differences that I mentioned. I know that most of the ride quality is going to come from your struts. And of course the tread left on your tire. When we were looking at my Solara, I haven't put a lot of miles on that car, but that car rides really rough compared to when I first got those 20s on there. And I'm on the original tires. They're like 14 years old. They're cracking. Next summer I'm getting new tires for the car. I've really driven them into the ground. But that car definitely rides harder, and that's because there's no tread left on the tire. So remember, all these things take into account your sidewall height, your suspension component, your strut quality, and of course the tread left in your tires are all things that are and your roads that weigh into how your car is going to ride. be honest with you, if you're really super concerned with the ride quality, you know, you probably just leave your car stock. You know, when we do up these things, we make cars look a certain way and customize them. There is a little bit of a, I would say, a little bit of a sacrifice there. I don't think ride quality is really, if all your, if you know, again, if your suspension's in good quality, your struts aren't blown, your roads aren't atrocious, and you know, you don't lower the car where you're sitting on the bump stops, I don't think that your ride quality is really a big deal. I think the biggest part of having low profile tires on a vehicle, the biggest stresses that I have to deal with my setup is bad weather. You're going to get snow, they're useless. Like, don't expect with low profile tires to really have good traction or to be able to drive the car. They just don't work. Now, there might be special tires out there, I don't know, but every brand I've ever had, it's pretty much useless. I mean, you just don't get any traction. The tread compound's not designed to operate and be softer or to grip at those lower temperatures. So I know when it snows for me, I'm kind of stranded. So that's kind of a stressor. Other things, if you get ice, you know, you slide into a curb with some stock wheels or bubble tires, you know, you might not be too concerned with it, but you slide into a curb with anything that I got, now it's like money to replace it if you can even find it. So it's a real headache. It's to the point where when we get bad weather, I almost try really not to drive. I'll try to get rides, you know, maybe I can borrow my folks' car, but on my daily driver, my Honda, I would generally put the stocks back on for winter time. Just in case anything happens, I'm not going to be out a set of wheels. So these are all things to think about. But it's, again, getting back to the question, do they ride hard? I don't think that you're going to find, in my opinion, a low-profile tire really riding any harder once you're into low profile. I don't think it's worth mentioning. Again, if all the components are good and your car's got good suspension, good condition struts, it's not aggressively lowered. If we're just looking at a stock vehicle and throwing those low-profile tires on it with a wheel fitment, I really don't think you're going to notice much of a difference. If anything, I think you'll notice the car handles a lot better. When you turn the wheel, it doesn't sway as much. And of course, you know, and I got asked this question today: are they noisier? Really, you know, it just depends on the tire. I found if you go with cheaper tires, like some of your Amazon specials and these off brands, they can be noisier. But none of it's enough for me to really make a big deal about. I know that there are little sacrifices in life when it comes to doing up a car, and you know, I know that the new tires I got on my Honda, they're pretty noisy. Enough where I was like, man, what the hell? I better take these wheels off and figure out what the deal is. They're just noisy tires based on the tread design. They're not, you know, one of your elite brands. You know, when you go with brands like Nitto, and there's a lot of brands out there. Most of them are pretty good. But you start going to cheaper ones, sometimes there are sacrifices with the noise quality, the quality of ride, the noise. But again, none of these things are really huge concerns to me. The enjoyment I get out of driving a customized car that I've made it my own. It's a reflection of my taste and personality. When, you know, not that when I say when somebody sees me, nobody really sees me. You know what I mean? No, everybody's in their own world. But when you're younger and you have a big group of friends, and you know, you're out chasing girls and they're chasing. Girls are chasing you, chasing me. You know, I didn't do a lot of girl chasing. You know, generally, they made it very easy for me. You know, I mean, I don't know, low profile tires. Well, I don't know what it is, but all joking aside, you know, generally, I've always liked having a very unique looking car, and I know that anytime that anybody who does know me and knows, you know, that I'm, you know, knows what I drive, you can't miss it, you know, and I like that. I like being unique. I like being different, and I really like the creative process of getting something new, having the vision, customizing my own way, and making it my own. And you know, not everybody's like that. You know, my dad, my parents, they're not into customized cars. My dad's a stock car guy. You know, just my sister too, brother-in-law, same kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that at all. I've always been into customizing things, and that's just who I am, you know. So, but I hope these are kind of helpful points if you are looking to add wheels and tires to your car, do any kind of work like that when it comes to tires. Because if you do go to like I see a lot of guys doing stuff on YouTube, and you know, to me, a lot of them sometimes you can tell when someone don't know what they're talking about. Like one guy had a tire. He did a video like this, and he was like, showing you how the tire, like, he had some kind of issue. I was like, yo, that doesn't happen, dude. That's not the way a tire looks if you have a flat and you pull over. Like, you rode on that for like 5 miles to have it look like that. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. I put up this video just to help. If you guys do have any questions whatsoever, I am pretty well experienced with with this kind of low profile tire thing and putting wheels on cars. And putting wheels on cars that really, honestly, when I've gone to dealers or like, you know, Les Schwab Discount Tire to have wheels and tires put on cars, they always tell me those won't fit. Those aren't going to fit the car, because a lot of times they're depending upon a computer to tell them that. And unless you get into there and measure backspacing, offsets, ODs, crawl in there, check for clearances, you're not really going to know. But remember, a lot of times those guys are really just going to put the safe thing on your car, what they can say, so they don't get sued. Their policies have gotten so ridiculous with even fixing a flat that honestly, whenever I go to have wheels put on my car, I take the wheels off and I bring in the wheels and I just state that they're not going on a vehicle. Because even some of the wheels that I've had on cars, wheels and tire combinations, that the load rating in the load index is completely safe from the manufacturer for the weight of the vehicle. They're like, oh no, the car came with much more higher rated tires, which is completely ridiculous, because you don't need. It was overkill from the factory, probably because the factory got a good deal on the tires. That was it. That's what they chose to put on the car. That's what they decided to do, and now. If you have that situation, you're stuck to taking wheels off the car and bring them in to have tires mounted. Or if you find a smaller mom and pop shop, where I live, you don't really have a lot of that. So you're kind of trapped with dealing with these big companies. If you live like California, I'm sure there's all kinds of shops, you know, where guys are customizing cars and putting stuff on there. But remember, just do the safe thing, do the research. Not that it takes that long, but if you do have any questions, is my point, as much as I've rambled on this video. If you do have any questions, I'm always here to help you guys, give you guys my 2 cents, and give you guys an honest response. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. If I do, I'll try to lend a hand. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate you taking the time to watch me. Subscribe to the channel, and take care.